Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 2 of the Q&A, so let's go ahead and get this started. All right, first question. Afternoon, Coach. Could the decline barbell bench be used as an assistance movement, maybe third in the exercise order, or is it completely useless? Thanks for your time and help. Uh, is it useless? No. No, it's not completely useless, but I would generally say just a good arch on the bench press will give you largely what you want from it. Now, because of the angles on the decline, could you remove leg drive? Okay. Someone who always uses leg drive because they know how to get tight, it might be a good way to take leg drive out. So it would replicate similar in some ways what we get from a floor press. So if your goal was to just build more pec for the bottom of your bench, the decline can certainly have its place. I don't see why not. It's perfectly reasonable. But I think you're generally going to get more from a bench press or from a floor press. So the next question kind of becomes, where would you put it? Third exercise? No. No, this is a big movement. It's a big movement, uses a lot of low chest. I would probably put it number 2. All right? Personally, if I had a lifter who wanted to do this, or we were going to do it, it would probably be some sort of flat bench. And if you wanted to mess with decline, the second spot would be a good place to put it. And your incline or overhead work third, unless those need to be a priority for you. But generally speaking, our exercise order should go from biggest movements to smallest. Now we can kind of scrap that when we're doing stuff like separating our back and chest work. So like for me, for example, I tend to do all of my rowing after all of my pressing is done. So that doesn't always follow the order, but in terms of similar movements, whether it's pressing, pulling, things like that, you usually want to do the biggest exercises first. And a decline bench is quite a big movement. So that's usually where I would put it. Now, the exception might be, what if you wanted to just do some really light, high rep dumbbell work? That might be worth putting later in, third or fourth, as far as your exercises go. Right? You could certainly do that, and I would almost lean in that direction. If you wanted a good supplemental lift, just for adding volume, adding hypertrophy, I might be more inclined to recommend decline dumbbells over the decline barbell. Because if we're going to do a barbell, I don't know, I would much rather see a big movement. I would much rather see a floor press or a bench or a closed grip bench or something in that slot. Just me personally. But as far as the dumbbells go, because again, we get that angle to where we're hitting the low chest very effectively. We get the deeper stretch with dumbbells. We can get very similar effect to what we get from a dip. Okay, so I would lean in the direction of doing it with dumbbells if you're going to do it at all. And this is even me speaking as a strength guy, right? Just for increasing your bench press. All right, next question. Are there any specifications I should look for in getting a belt? I've never trained with a belt, and after your recent videos, I'm going to implement a belt. One of the things you saw someone put down there, Jason answered this question in his videos before, he just bought a random one from Amazon. And I did do that for a long time. Now, I have a pair of Inzer belts now. People will say, why do you have a pair? Because I will at some point possibly cut to a lower body fat with a smaller waistline, and so I have the next size down under the one I use now. The one I use now, I'm about in the middle of the belt. So it gives me room to bulk, gives me some room to cut. So the main thing you're looking for with belts is making sure it will fit. Making sure it will fit, and you're going to have less wiggle room with a good 13 millimeter prong belt like I use from Inzer. Okay? You're going to have less wiggle room. That's the biggest thing you're looking at. And if you go with a cheaper 10 millimeter lever, if you get the size wrong. Number one, I find the prong belts like that tend to have quite a bit of adjustment. Usually at least 6 inches of waistline difference, right? So even if you've slightly got your waist measurement off a bit, the belt will generally be good. You just have to adjust it each time. You have to adjust it each time. And lever belts are easy to use. They're very noob friendly, 10 millimeter, easier for people newer with belts. Any cheap 10 millimeter lever belt that looks like it's about the right size for your waist. The big advantage to the cheap one, if you get the size wrong, and you got one for $45 off Amazon Prime, you haven't invested $120, $140 in a really high-end belt that doesn't fit. So that's one of the other perks of describing the cheap ones. And for most lifters who are just learning to use a belt, they'll be fine. You guys have seen me deadlift over 600 pounds in a cheap $50 Amazon belt. Okay, perfectly fine for most people's uses. I upgraded belts when I want to get more serious and more aggressive, which I'm doing. Now that I'm chasing elite numbers, I use a really, really good belt. It's just not necessary early on. And again, it's also not noob friendly. Like the belt that I use now is a first time belt. As a first time belt, I wouldn't recommend it. I would seriously recommend just one of the cheap 10 millimeter lever belts of the correct size, and it's just not that complicated. It's pretty straightforward. You'll learn to use it pretty quickly. You just have to adjust it. All right, next question. Is throwing in some regular cardio still a good way to increase work capacity for the recreational lifter? Depends on the type of cardio. Do you mean just getting in and riding your bike or jogging on a treadmill? Probably not going to see substantial work capacity increases in your training. Your overall health might be better. It might even help you recover a little bit from training, so it's not a bad idea. But in that context, no. Do you mean some general physical preparedness? Do we mean barbell complexes, dragging a sled, pushing a prowler, loaded carries, yoke carries, something like that? That can increase your work capacity for a lifter. Okay, because we're getting in shape in a way that is with a higher intensity. So higher intensity cardio like that tends to be good for work capacity. But again, oftentimes it's specific to some of the lifts you're doing. In other words, if none of the body parts get really involved in that GPP work that are being used on the lifts that you're talking about, the carryover might not be that good. Your general conditioning will be better, so that'll possibly increase recovery between sets, but you may not have built up the work capacity in those specific muscles. So again, something to think about, but I think is a good general rule, because that's usually where we run into work capacity issues, is lower body. Any of that GPP work like that will help quite a bit. It'll improve work capacity, improve recovery between sets. Again, overall a very good idea. So not a bad thing. Just keep in mind that not all cardio is going to produce the same effect in regards to what it is that you're trying to do here. So, but you think you need to keep in mind a little bit of cardio, even if we're not getting the work capacity benefits, can still be useful for your overall health, energy turnover, stuff like that. Okay? So it's not a bad idea to incorporate some. All right, next question and last question of the week. Why am I so stront? Dylan, my brother. It's not stront, it's stronk with a K. It's not a T, it's a K. It's spelled stronk. And why are you so strong? Probably from lifting all that heavy ass weight. That's going to be my guess. That's how you get strong. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.